Dirt Trax is sponsored by Can-Am, the ride says it all. Polaris, the world leader in off-road innovation. And by Yamaha, conquer outdoors.
So without a doubt, one of the most highly anticipated, most exciting news of the season was the launch of the new Maverick X3. And they released the vehicle in Orlando at the dealer meeting. It was great to sort of see the vehicle in person. I wasn't there, but AJ was. And there was an opportunity where Can-Am was going to be inviting a small group of media representatives to go to Mexico to drive 250 miles of the Baja 1000 course. And luckily for me, there's a lot of events that happened throughout the season. Both AJ and Luke weren't available to go, but I definitely was. And so I definitely signed up for this tour of duty.
Well, we've just arrived in San Diego. Gonna get our bags, go down to shuttle bus area, and then we're en route to Mexico. So we should be there having our little cerveza in about 3 hours.
You know, there's lots of media introductions that we go to. One of the most popular places to go to sports side by side is sort of Glamis, or to go to some type of dune environment. But you know, really the DNA of the X3 really sort of encapsulated sort of that off-road trophy truck experience, and there's nothing more representative of trying to sort of emulate a trophy truck than running the Baja 1000. So as we pulled into Ensenada, we were staying at San Nicolas, and San Nicolas is a hotel that hosts a lot of the major teams that participate in any of the Baja races. And as we pulled in to the compound, we were greeted with probably about over 20 new Maverick X3s of every different model variation.
Hold on. We have arrived. That was a pretty neat drive, and then we get a surprise with a whole lot of X3s.
One of the first things you notice with the X3 is just the presence that it has as soon as you sort of walk up to the vehicle. I mean, it is larger than any other side-by-side in the market right now, at 102 inches long. When you get to the XRS, it's got these monster 30-inch tires, 24 inches of suspension travel, 72 inches of stance. So, I mean, you're looking at this vehicle and it's like a side-by-side like you've never really seen before in stock form. What's funny about this trip is anytime we sort of go into a foreign country for a Can-Am event, it seems like we're going to be hooking up with Olivier Camus. He is the senior product manager for the X3. He really took this vehicle from concept to reality.
Can-Am has been the first really to pass the bar of the 100 HP at the time with the introduction of the Maverick. And then down the road, we've been the first again to reinvent this market and this segment by offering a turbo at the time at 121 HP and after that at 131 HP. But we found out that really to have a sport experience and to push the limits, it was taking the industry-leading performance engine, but more than that. So we really wanted to have a new story with the chassis, with the suspension, so that the customer can live a brand new experience.
We're going to be leaving Ensenada tomorrow. I think tomorrow is about 140 miles that we're going to be doing. Total trip is about 250 miles. It's shaping up to be a pretty sweet trip. So, speaking probably for everybody here, I mean, we're all pretty much jonesing to get on this ride. It's going to be pretty sweet.
So even though Ensenada is the start to any of the Baja races, one of the things that you have to do in order to get out of Ensenada is you have to drive along the city streets about 30 miles before you sort of get to the start of any of the trailheads. Obviously, there's some legalities involved with driving down the streets when you have about 15 different media representatives. So what we did is we hopped in a bus, we drove 30 miles to the wine region, which is called Santo Tomas, and we met up with all the crew from Can-Am who had already shuttled the vehicles down. As we were all getting suited up to ride, we got situated in each of the vehicles. And so one of the first things you do notice, and this is an area that Can-Am had put a lot of work towards, was sort of the interior comforts of the vehicle. And a seat that they refer to as ergo-lock. And so as you sit into the vehicle, it's pretty amazing. I mean, there's a huge improvement in terms of just the seating position of the X3 over the existing Maverick. It's 6 inches lower to begin with. What's also cool is that this ergo-lock seat is a monocoque design. they had actually commissioned a design firm that does a lot of work with Ferrari to design the seats. So as you sort of get into the seat, I mean, you literally sort of like just fall into the seat and it contours to your body. You feel like you're completely locked in. As we started getting underway, what we were going to be doing is we're going to be taking a trail. It's about 10 miles or so, and we were going to be going over to the coastline. And that was going to be sort of the first area that we were going to be able to sort of get set up to take some pictures and some video.
Dirt Trax is sponsored by Princess Auto, a unique world of equipment, tools, and more.
So the first area that we stopped was just right on the coast. There was a cool little bend in the road that came up the hill to a sharp corner where we were staging for some photos. But what was cool is down below along the beach, there was a series of small little dunes as well. So we were able to sort of get down along the beach and just run it and see how fast we can get going, and did a couple drag races between us media guys just to see who could sort of win and beat each other out.
Really impressive how light the steering is on it too.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, it's really like steering ratio, everything's just super comfortable, but it's super light.
It's super responsive also.
Yeah.
It's only 1.5 ton from lock to lock.
Mm-hmm.
So basically 3/4 of a turn, you know, from on the right and 3/4 on the left. So super direct.
One of the things when you look at a 250-mile ride over 2 days is those are long days. I mean, the first day we had 140 miles that we needed to cover before we got to our overnight destination. That's a long day. I mean, that's 8+ hours in a vehicle. If the vehicle is not comfortable, those 8 hours can feel like 16 grueling hours. That was one of the things that we really appreciated about this tour is we really got to understand the creature comforts of the vehicle. So not only just the interior, but how it handled the terrain as well. I mean, the precision of the vehicle was great. The suspension of the vehicle was outstanding. It really allowed you to become isolated within that cockpit and just tackle whatever terrain came your way.
Those 3 points, defiant, precise, and powerful, are really, really important to understand for one big reason, because they define how the Can-Am Maverick X3 stands out from the competition. So first, defiant, because the first time we're bringing some specs which have been completely unknown on the side-by-side industry. After that, level of precision has been completely enhanced. The last pillar, of course, powerful, throwing an industry-leading engine was critical for us. This one is a Rotax turbocharged engine, inline triple, 154 HP.
Day one, we got to our lunch stop a little bit later in the afternoon after having a really, really great meal. I mean, what was great about being sort of within the interior of Mexico was not only how authentic the experience was, but how authentic the food was.
Yes, we just finished pit stop, lunchtime. We stopped in just a little town about 40 miles from where we started. Came along the coast and came back up along a major highway here. Got some time on the DS. We're going to get in another DS. This one's just finished a little bit differently with some parts and accessories. And then hopefully later today or tomorrow morning we'll be able to get into the XRS as well and see what it's made of. But it's been a pretty good day so far, and we got another 100 miles to go, so got to get going.
So the Lone Star edition was really, really cool. It had a lot of cool accessories on it. Obviously it had a roof, it incorporated Baja design lights, and they also decked it out with the speaker system, incorporated rock sliders, and it also incorporated some cool Link accessory luggage detachments where you can also mount a spare tire in the rear, but then also have access to like a cooler or a storage bin in the back of the vehicle as well.
Roadside assistance, not quite CEA, but best we can do.
Obviously, with the launch of any new vehicle, one of the first segments in this business that tries to take advantage of it is the aftermarket. And the aftermarket does a really, really good job. However, sometimes the aftermarket is really challenged in terms of precision, in terms of how well that part or accessory would fit. Through the design phase of the X3, there was a short list of companies that were actually invited in to work with Can-Am in developing a line of parts and accessories. The companies range from Lone Star Racing to S3 Power Sports to Beard Seats to Baja Design Lights. Yoshimura Exhaust was another one. So what was great about this is that these companies were able to sort of work with Can-Am hand in hand and design a line of parts and accessories that fit perfectly to this vehicle and had really, really good functional design. As we got towards the end of the day, the sun was coming down. We got into the compounds of Mike's Sky Ranch. Mike's Sky Ranch is this iconic resort out in the middle of nowhere. It's located in the San Pedro Matir foothills. The owner of the ranch has about 1,000 acres that he purchased back in the 70s. It was a good place to stop and enjoy a nice meal with the crew.
Dirt Trax is brought to you by NBRP Performance Exhaust. Lightweight performance.
Morning of day 2, we're about to head out. We're going to go about 110 miles back towards Ensenada. And there's a couple cool stops we're going to be going through. Pine Forest, hopefully find some sections with some nice whooped out sections, some jumps, because we got the XRS today and we want to push this thing to the limit.
So as we got underway and sort of the first portion of day 2, we had to jump off the highway and we just had to sort of get through some, that wasn't overly technical, especially when you have the XRS. I mean, nothing really seems all that technical any longer when you have such a capable vehicle. But we did have to sort of crawl along some rocks. So after we sort of got through this technical area, we knew that the next 40, 50 miles was basically just going to sort of be more open desert, but it was basically like, leave yourself as much room as possible because you're going to be just like hammering down on that loud pedal and you're not going to be letting it off until you sort of get to the next sort of checkpoint to catch up with the crew. It wasn't long before we were just blitzing through these whoops. And what was great with the XRS, 24 inches of travel in the rear, 22 inches in the front, the new Fox 3.0 shocks with the internal bypass technology, it just literally soaked up everything. You never felt anything. Beyond the travel, beyond the shock technology and stuff, it interacts with the chassis. With the chassis being so rigid, it really allows the suspension to be isolated, and it really allowed the engineers to really fine-tune the damping performance of that vehicle. We've had a lot of great exposure with the 900 Ace, but we never really knew what its true potential was until we saw the X3. And what was really interesting to learn is that Rotax, which is owned by BRP, integrated in the new turbo. This turbo produces next to zero turbo lag, and that's largely due in part to the turbo being so closely located and being really part of the exhaust manifold. So literally, when you stomp on that pedal, I mean, it goes instantaneous power to the transmission, and that transmission transfers the power directly to the wheel. I mean, it was probably one of the most impressive turbos we've driven in a long time. So our day was coming to an end. We had maybe about 40 miles or so to go. And the next area that we're going to be going through is, believe it or not, we went from complete desolate desert to this lush forest area with pine trees. Just like other portions of the trip, we ended the trip with another great meal. It was a really cool taco stand, sort of like an open style design and all that stuff. And we sat down for a great meal, and we were able to sort of sit down with each other and really sort of recap the experience. What was synonymous with all of the guys in attendance was that this was probably one of the best media introductions I think we've ever gone to in terms of truly experiencing the vehicle for all it's worth. When you go over 250 miles through legendary terrain of the Baja race course and all that stuff, and you're going from desert to dune to pine forest areas to high elevations to sort of creek beds and whatnot, you're really pushing the vehicle to its limits, not only to see its durability, but its comfort, but its overall performance, and most importantly, its overall versatility for the market. So it was something that we all greatly appreciated. The X3 passed with flying colors. It didn't matter who you spoke to, everyone was incredibly impressed with it. Can-Am definitely raised the bar on the X3 and what we can expect, hopefully from other manufacturers as well. And overall, it was just a truly amazing experience. And we look forward to spending more time in the X3 on our own.
Closed captioning of Dirt Trax is sponsored by Triton Trailer, built for adventure.
The very first thing we thought when we first got our hands on Yamaha's new YXZ was, man, this thing is awesome. The very next thought we had was, this isn't going to work very well on the trail. Interestingly enough, Yamaha already had those thoughts before we even knew the original YXZ existed. And with those concerns in mind, they co-developed the YXZ SS at exactly the same time. SS stands for Sport Shift. Translated into people speak, it means paddle shifter. But you can't just call it a YXZ with paddle shifters. Why? Because the Toyota Corolla has paddle shifters. What the YXZ has isn't the same thing. There are many different ways to electronically shift a transmission. The Corolla, for example, isn't actually manual in any way. The paddle shifters on that vehicle simply tell the automatic transmission when to shift. It's pretty boring and it's not very sporty. A Ferrari, on the other hand, that's a car that has paddle shifters. They function much like the ones you'd find on an F1 car. The transmission is far more manual than it is automatic, and this is where the YXZ SS's transmission and shifter setup has its roots. No, it's not an F1 car, but it does feel almost as good for one very important reason. The transmission in the YXZ SS is almost identical to that found in the manual version, clutch and all. But instead of actuating the clutch with your foot and the shifter with your hand, the clutch is engaged by an electronic actuator and the gears are shifted with a solenoid. It's as manual as a paddle shift can possibly get. And this is really good because it maintains the manual shift YXZ's level of excitement, but it simplifies the shifting process so it's not as cumbersome in tight situations. The underpinnings of the SS are identical to those of the standard YXZ, as is the motor, and these are two very good things. Why? Because the YXZ is a great platform and that 3-cylinder engine is awesome. It outputs 110 horsepower, so no, not at the same level as today's crop of turbos. But before Can-Am and Polaris raised the turbo horsepower output to 150 plus, the ultra-efficient manual transmission in the YXZ actually kept it pretty close in terms of power getting to the ground. Now though, it's pretty clear, Yamaha needs to up the horsepower to at least 130. Still, that 3-cylinder engine makes excellent torque, pulls hard, and sounds amazing. So if the YXZ SS has the same motor and transmission as the manual shift YXZ, why is it better on the trail if you still have to shift? The simple answer is that the vehicle is doing all the hard work for you. When you shift the SS into gear, the clutch actuator holds the clutch fully open. As you begin to accelerate, the actuator closes the clutch just like you would with your foot, only better. If you didn't know better, you'd swear it was a belt transmission on takeoff. Shifting is equally as smooth and effortless. You just flip the paddle and the computer tells the actuator to open the clutch, quickly shift the gear, and then smoothly let the clutch out. All of this happens in the blink of an eye. The computer can even tell when it needs to slip the clutch a bit to avoid jerky engagement. This is called half clutch, and the only way you'll know it's happening is by watching for the half clutch light on the dashboard. So back to the question at hand. Why does all this make the YXZ SS so easy to drive on the trail? Well, because once you tell the vehicle to shift gears using your fingers, your work is done. No more slipping the clutch when things get tight or slow, or having to keep one hand on the shifter while you're working the gears. On the trail, you just casually flick the paddles and go. Is it as effortless as a CVT? No, but in some ways it's more fun, and there are circumstances when it can actually be more beneficial. There are a few things you need to know about the YXZ SS if you're going to get the most out of it. The first thing you need to understand is auto downshift. The SS is not an automatic and does not have any automatic shifting modes like a Honda, for example. So, auto downshift isn't meant to be a driving tool, it only works at near idle RPM. It's simply a convenience feature. If you're in third gear and you come up to a stop sign, auto downshift will cycle through second and then into first gear just before the vehicle comes to a stop. It's convenient and it's unobtrusive. The next feature you need to know about is launch control. Yamaha wanted to make sure there was no performance disadvantages to driving a YXZ SS, so they incorporated the ability to drop the clutch on takeoff if you want. The system is easy to engage, and it works even better than dropping the clutch on a manual YXZ, in my opinion. If the vehicle's in 4x4, the YXZ pulls super hard from a dead stop when the paddles are dropped. There really isn't enough time here to go over all the large and small details that make the YXZ SS different than its predecessor and unique in the industry. So here's what you need to know, whittled down to the most important detail. The YXZ SS is everything the regular YXZ is, but thanks to the electronic activation of its manual transmission, it maintains all the fun and excitement of the manual YXZ without any hassles or annoyance. Basically, it's a YXZ for anybody who doesn't live in the desert or the dunes, and it's every bit as good as we hoped it would be.
Dirt Trax Television has been sponsored by Polaris, the world leader in off-road innovation, Can-Am, the ride says it all, and by Arctic Cat. Share our passion.
Like the video you just saw? Do you want to see more? Click the subscribe link and add the Dirt Trax channel, and you're going to see a whole lot more great content.